This is a video on burns and pressure ulcers. So, what is a burn? It's an injury that results from direct contact or exposure to any thermal, chemical, electrical, or radiation source. So, what happens is you basically cook the skin. You destroy skin cells, destroy the proteins, they denature and are finished. So it can be dry heat, wet heat, electricity, radiation, chemicals, acids, uh, severe like alkaline can do it as well. Um, so we've all had little minor burns. Burns are assessed based on the depth and the size, the percentage of total body surface area. But with that too, we look at the location of the burn, the age of the person, the general health of the person, the type of injury that there is, right? And we got to worry about the complications, risk of infection, cosmetic, functional disabilities, the risk of death. Um, if there's a lot of burn, if it's more than 15 or 20% of the skin is burnt, then really a shock is a huge thing because of the amount of liquid that's lost into the blisters. If the blisters burst, infection is a big problem. There may not even be enough liquid left for circulation to be part of it. Now, I want to kind of talk about the percentage of the body and how we estimate that. You'll find the whole thing on burns on page 227 through to 232 in your textbook. So there's a couple of ways that they assess the amount of the body that is covered, and it's just a kind of a rule of thumb. There's the easiest way is something called the rule of nines, and it works in adults. It doesn't work in kids, but it definitely works in adults. And basically, it's nines or multiple of 9%. So your head and neck is 9%. Your anterior thorax and abdomen is 18%. Your posterior is 18%. Each upper limb, 9%. Each lower limb, 18%. So if somebody gets burnt down their entire front and one leg, it's 32%, for instance. There's a picture, figure 711 on 228 in your textbook outlining this. Now, it's a good, quick rule of thumb, and like I say, it's okay for adults. The problem is that children get burnt, babies get burnt, and their body proportions are out of proportion. Babies have relatively large heads and small thorax. So there's on figure 712, there's another chart on 229 looking at the Lund-Browder formula. And basically, so infants, the head makes up 19%, 1 to 4-year-olds 17%, 5 to 9-year-olds 13%, 10 to 14-year-olds 11%, teenagers 15 to 18 9%, adults 7%. And so there's a kind of a chart that emergency people would tick off to indicate how much of the burn, and then they just add it up, and see what and treatment depends on that. Now, it doesn't have to be that freaking accurate. Like the treatment, if you have a 17% of your body is burnt, the treatment's going to be the same as if there's 22% of your body burnt. So, I mean, accuracy isn't that critical. The depth of the burns matters too. So, first degree burns, as you see in Figure 710 on page 228, are fairly shallow. They're superficial burns. They are just in the epidermis. They're irritated. They're painful. There's redness. They don't blister. So this is sunburn, exposure to flash, to flame, to hot liquid scalds will do this. And it basically looks like this. You've all seen a sunburn. So it's red, the skin blanches when there's pressure. There may or may not be any edema to it. It's painful. It's painful to touch. So it may tingle, and it feels better when you cool it, when you put cooling compresses and things on. You peel and you lose the squamous cells, and in usually about 3 to 7 days, and everything is good. Too many of these, and it may lead to chronic changes that may lead to cancer. Second degree burns are a little deeper. They're still superficial. These are like more scalds, oil, tar, different flames, that kind of thing. So they're a little deeper burn. It's the epidermis and the dermis. They hurt like hell when they happen. You get swelling, edema, pain, redness, blisters, lots of inflammation, and they could scar. So you get these thick-walled blisters. They're very painful. They're sensitive to cold. They don't get soothed by cold. They take 3 weeks to heal if they're superficial, partial thickness. If they're deep partial thickness, they take about 4 weeks to heal. These ones open you up to infection, especially if the blisters burst. They can. That's the most serious complication. The scarring may or may not be serious, and they look like this. You've all seen this kind of a burn. You probably have all had one. Third degree burns are full depth. They go right through to the subcutaneous tissue. They're also called full thickness burns. They can actually, if they start to cook some of the tissues like the fascia and stuff underneath, they can be called fourth degree burns, but generally we call them third. So this is prolonged exposure to chemicals. These can be electrical burns. Steam can do this. Flame. So people that have been in house fires and that often get third degree burns. So everything gets destroyed. Like the hair follicles, which are down in the subcutaneous tissue, get cooked. The sebaceous glands, sweat glands. What's interesting about these, although they look far worse, they tend to be less painful than the second degree burns, because literally you destroy the nerve endings, and there is very little pain because of it. Um, the and there's no feeling in it either. Um, so um, these people may need skin grafts to heal. There's so much damage that it may not uh, heal properly. Um, they can put people into shock through the loss of fluids. They end up looking like this, pretty nasty burn. Um, the the biggest problem with these third degree burns is the amount of scar tissue that's formed after the burn is healed. Um, it can be very tight, constrictive scar tissue. It may limit mobility. It may so it can change the not only the appearance of the skin but the function of the skin. There's the skin at that scar site will be less elastic, more restrictive, not able to bend. If it crosses a joint, then the joint may become immobile, and then consequently there can be joint problems down the line, um, muscle atrophy of the muscles that move that joint, that kind of thing. It um, can be a number of issues. So, first and second degree burns, we tend to put lotions and antibiotic creams on it. The and time heals it. So it's managing kind of the symptoms until the body heals. The third degree burns really need intervention. They need to be cleaned. They need to be debrided, which is taking the dead tissue away. May need skin grafts, may need plastic surgery to avoid the contractures of scar tissue. Massage is not not indicated. You got to work within people's tolerances. Most people, even with a sunburn, probably don't want to get massage just because it's sensitive to touch. So that's burns.